You know, coming into this season, there were a lot of expectations for the Phoenix Suns. When you have a roster featuring Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, the bar isn't just making the playoffs, it's competing for a championship. But at this point, if there's one thing that you can consistently count on, it's this team disappointing while looking like it has no idea what it's doing.
The best mid-range shooter in the league. I think of all the great scorers, and he's going to get into that 30,000 point club either tonight or very soon. I don't think anybody has...
Lately, the Suns have been dropping games that they simply could not afford to lose, falling to teams like the San Antonio Spurs, the Toronto Raptors, and yes, even my New Orleans Pelicans. Now let's put that into perspective for a second. The Spurs just lost Victor Wembanyama for the season, and they're still right behind the Suns in the standings. The Toronto Raptors have been in full rebuild mode, shipping off talent while other talent has been mysteriously missing games, yet they still managed to take down Phoenix. And as much as I love my Pelicans, they've struggled with injuries and looking like a decent ball club all year long. Yet, even they unfortunately handled business against this Suns squad. And I say unfortunately because at this point in the season, winning 4 out of 5 games does absolutely nothing for me. We've been the worst team in the league. I don't need a meaningless late season win streak. I need Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, or Dylan Harper. Give me those ping pong balls so we can be rewarded for our miserableness. Sadly, the Suns' struggles haven't just been some rough patch. It doesn't seem like they're in some temporary slump that they can shake off before they make a dramatic playoff push that makes us forget about everything. This is who the Phoenix Suns have been, and no amount of rallying together or crashing out is going to save them.
On the pick.
Look, there's a screen. There's a punch.
Boom.
I'm telling you.
Right, yeah.
Punching one of the nicest guys in the league in Karlo Matkovic was bad enough, but this next clip, this would be unexplainable.
And now 21 turns. Uh-oh. Showtime! Oh!
He hit his head. I think he hit his head on the side of the backboard.
Beal fouled him and went airborne, and from our angle, it looked like we were blocked, okay? But I think that Beal hit him in mid-flight. Yeah, he did.
I don't care about the unspoken rules, how badly that you're being beat, or how poorly that your season is going. You should never needlessly risk the health of a defenseless player, which is exactly what Bradley Beal does here. Beal helps him up afterwards, and Ant accepts the help, but I can't say that I would have done the same. This season, the Suns haven't had any identity, any toughness, and they haven't shown any real signs of improvement. That 8-1 start that had people thinking, oh, maybe the Suns will be a force this year, that has looked more and more like a mirage than an actual sign of progress, and the Suns have realized this. But before we continue, if you are enjoying the content, then be sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you never miss any more of our content. If you're looking to level up your sports experience, Underdog's Pick'em game puts you in the driver's seat so that you can do just that. Here's the deal. You choose your picks, keep an eye on the games, and let your picks lead you to potentially big wins. As you can see, I've already jumped in, and let me tell you that it's game changing. If you're ready for your shot, sign up using my code COOP. You'll snag up to $1,000 in bonus cash, plus a free pick. And every sign up helps to support the channel. Thanks for the support, and thank you Underdog for the sponsor. We've seen this story before. A super team built on big names, big expectations, which ultimately leads to big disappointment. The Suns went all in on KD, pairing him with Devin Booker, and then later adding Bradley Beal, thinking that they were building a championship contender. Instead, what they got was another failed experiment. And now, just like in Brooklyn, Durant is staring down the reality of another empty exit. And here's the thing, the Suns would try to salvage this whole experiment, but they'd fail miserably. Before the trade deadline, Phoenix was desperately trying to shake things up. They were in trade talks to bring in Jimmy Butler, hoping that his leadership and two-way dominance could be the missing piece to give this team some actual toughness. But guess what? That deal would fall apart in part because Bradley Beal wouldn't waive his no-trade clause. This is the same Bradley Beal who's been in and out of the lineup. The same Bradley Beal who they brought in to be a third star but hasn't lived up to it. The Suns were actually so desperate to shake things up that they almost didn't let Bradley Beal's no-trade clause stop them. In the name of shaking things up, they almost traded Kevin Durant back to the place where he won 2 championships. According to reports, Phoenix explored a potential trade that would have landed them Jimmy Butler while sending KD back to the Bay. But ultimately, it wasn't the Suns or the Warriors who shut that down. It was KD himself, and his reason in typical KD fashion would not be what you would expect.
I wanted to read you this quote from Steve Kerr. He said, "I don't blame Kevin one bit for not wanting to rerun things here. He took so much for like, oh, you're jumping on the bandwagon, and then he's the finals MVP 2 years in a row, and he still gets criticized. Why would he want to face all that BS again?" What do you think of that?
Talk crazy about me all the time, you know, like that's not the reason why I didn't want to come back. I just didn't want to get traded midway through the season. It was nothing against my time with the Warriors, or I heard because I don't like Draymond. At the end of the day, I just didn't want to move, and I wanted to see it through with my team in Phoenix and see what we could do the rest of the season. So I'm glad I'm still there.
And then on Draymond's podcast, he'd say this: "I want to end my career on my terms. As far as the Warriors, I didn't want to move. And then as a player like me, I cost a lot. Me going into your team in the middle of the season, it's going to be a big blow to any team that I'm going to. I get why you wanted to trade for me. Simple fact, that's just business. But for me looking at it, it just doesn't make sense for either side to go through that when we could just play the season out, and if that's the decision you want to make in the offseason, then you figure it out." What KD said lines up perfectly with a recent game-changing report that just dropped. One that all but confirms the end of his time in Phoenix. According to Shams, bearing a deep playoff run, Kevin Durant and the Suns are expected to work together on a trade to send him to a contender of his choosing this offseason. Same story, different day. I feel bad for KD, because I already know that this man is going to get destroyed for this, the same way that he got destroyed for joining the Warriors back in the day.
And our gymnastics team was so dominant that Kevin Durant told me he wants to play for them next year.
A player this great should be competing for rings, building on his legacy, and cementing his place among the all-time greats. Instead, KD is stuck in yet another failed experiment, staring down the reality of having to find another new home just to stay in the championship conversation. Now, Shams would note that any trade that the Suns would make with Kevin Durant as of right now would be an attempt to retool around Devin Booker, which sounds like a nightmare. Booker is one of the few assets who could get the Suns the proper assets to fast-track a rebuild. If I were a Suns fan, I'd be absolutely heartbroken about all of this. Not too long ago, everything felt like it was finally clicking. CP3 joined the fold. Devin Booker was blossoming into a superstar, and a finals run signaled a bright future. But now, after a string of questionable moves that led to a failed super team, there is a very real chance that Kevin Durant ends up picking his next team. And if he does, the Suns will almost certainly fall short of getting fair value in a trade, especially considering KD's age and hefty contract. Kevin Durant is a dog, but as KD alluded to earlier, I can't imagine that too many contenders are positioned to still be competitive after they give up the farm for what will be a 37-year-old next season, making nearly $55 million. Simply matching that salary in a trade is a huge problem, let alone building a roster around him afterwards. One team that immediately jumps to mind as a serious contender for Kevin Durant is ironically America's most hated franchise at this moment in time, the Dallas Mavericks. If Kyrie were to stay in Dallas, I can absolutely see Nico Harrison convincing himself that a star-studded roster built around AD, Kyrie, and KD is worth the risk. Mind you that all of these guys have been Nike athletes, and that this trio actually had plans to team up in Boston when Kyrie was there, but obviously those plans never came to fruition. If this team happened, I would hate to be a part of that team's medical staff. Another intriguing possibility is Denver. Pairing a scoring monster with Nikola Jokic's playmaking and Jamal Murray's shot creation would make that offense even more terrifying. They'd still have to part with some key pieces to match KD's salary, but if they're serious about staying on top of the West, it's a move that might be too tempting to pass up. The only thing here is that this would require Calvin Booth actually taking a huge risk, and we know how he feels about those. But with KD, the team that has some actual steam right now is the Houston Rockets. Sam Amick of The Athletic says that the Rockets have been eyeing Durant and Booker as potential trade targets this offseason. The Rockets are already good. They've got a ton of young players and draft picks, plus an urgent desire to make a splash. The biggest issue, of course, would be convincing Phoenix and either KD or Booker, who the Suns don't want to trade as of right now, that Houston is the right next step. In the comments below, let me know where you guys think that Kevin Durant's next chapter will be if the Suns aren't able to bounce back. And also, let me know how you feel about the Suns these past couple of years as a whole. Anyways guys, there's some more going on in the basketball world that we have to be covering, so clicking the video on the screen right now and using code COOP for Underdog are both great ways to support this channel. I'm Get Like Coop, bringing you guys the scoop until our next upload.